I am 27, male, and work as a medical device sales representative for one of the big players in the industry. You know those guys who show up in operating rooms with fancy equipment and teach surgeons how to use the latest implants and tools? That is me. I got into it right out of college, landed a junior position, and basically killed myself working up the ladder. It turns out being young in this field is actually an advantage, because you can handle the insane schedule better than the older representatives. For those wondering about the money, since it becomes relevant later, my base salary is around $165,000 plus commission. Good years can push total compensation well over $250,000, but you seriously earn every penny. My schedule is absolute chaos, up at 4 a.m. for early surgeries, driving between 3 different hospitals most days, and late-night dinner meetings with doctors to discuss upcoming procedures. Sometimes I am in the operating room for 12 hours straight. Other times I am putting 300 miles on my car going between facilities. It is not exactly the kind of job that makes having a normal relationship easy. I also do some consulting work on the side, helping smaller medical companies figure out their sales strategies and get their foot in the door with hospitals. That brings in decent extra cash, but means my weekends are not really my own either. Looking back, this crazy schedule probably made it easier for Sarah, obviously not her real name, to pull off what she did, but we will get to that part. I met Sarah, 23, female, about 3 years ago at this little hospital cafe where I was killing time between surgeries. She was working there part-time while trying to finish her communications degree. Man, the first time I saw her, it was like one of those stupid movie moments. She was gorgeous, had this infectious laugh, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. We got talking about medical stuff, and she had all these questions about what I did. Looking back now, those questions were way more focused on money than actual interest in the job. But love makes you blind, I guess. I remember our first real date. I took her to this nice steakhouse near the hospital. She ordered the most expensive thing on the menu without even glancing at the price, but I was so caught up in how amazing she looked that I did not even care. She told me all about her dreams of working in healthcare public relations, how she wanted to help medical companies tell their stories better. Funny how that worked out. It turned out she was pretty good at telling stories all right, just not the kind she claimed. Red flags started popping up pretty early, but I was too stupid to see them for what they were. Like 2 weeks into dating, she was already asking really specific questions about my commission structure, wanting to know exactly how the bonus system worked and when the big payouts came. She would make these jokes about how lucky she was to find a guy with such a stable career, but you know how it is when you are falling for someone. Your brain just finds ways to explain away all that stuff. The really messed up part? I actually liked how interested she seemed in my career. Most girls I dated before would get annoyed with the crazy hours and constant phone calls from surgeons, but Sarah, she acted like she totally got it. She would bring me coffee during long cases, text me good luck before big surgeries, and even learn some medical terminology so she could understand what I was talking about. Now I know it was all an act, but damn, if she was not good at playing the supportive girlfriend role. What gets me is how she managed to make everything seem so natural. She did not just go straight for the expensive stuff. She built it up slowly, started with small things like asking me to grab dinner because she was broke until payday. Then it was helping with her phone bill because she had an emergency. Before I knew it, I was paying for everything. But it happened so gradually that it felt normal. I remember this one time, maybe 6 months in, when she got stranded at the mall because her card got declined. She called me crying about how embarrassed she was. I left in the middle of a lunch meeting with a surgeon to bring her my card. She acted so grateful, kept saying how lucky she was to have me, and even made this big show of trying to pay me back later with money she had borrowed from her mom. I found out later, looking back, that was probably a test, seeing how far I would go to help her out of a crisis. The thing that really kills me is how many people tried to warn me. My best friend straight up told me she seemed more interested in my wallet than me. My sister said something felt off about how quickly Sarah went from independent to totally relying on me financially. Even my mom made some comments about how Sarah never offered to help with anything that cost money, but I defended her every time like a complete idiot. I told them they did not understand her situation, how hard she was working on school, how much potential she had. God, writing all this out makes me feel like such a fool, but I guess that is why I am sharing it. Maybe someone else will recognize these patterns before they waste 3 years of their life like I did. So fast forward about 6 months into our relationship, Sarah's lease was coming up, and she started dropping hints about how much money she could save if we lived together. She made it sound so logical. We were spending most nights at each other's places anyway, and her apartment was basically just storing her stuff at this point. Plus, she argued, combining our incomes would let us get a really nice place downtown. Yeah, about that combining incomes part. We found this gorgeous apartment downtown, walking distance to some of my main hospital accounts, for $2,800 a month, which was steep. But Sarah convinced me it was worth it because I would save so much time not having to commute. The plan was she would pay utilities and groceries while I covered rent. It seemed fair at the time since I made more. Spoiler alert, that arrangement lasted exactly 2 months. First, it was little things. Her hours at the cafe kept getting cut. They had not, I found out later, she had requested fewer shifts. Then she was struggling to keep up with her car payments because textbooks cost so much this semester. Each time she had a money problem, she would get really anxious and start crying about how stressed she was trying to balance work and school. Stupid me, I would swoop in to fix everything. I still remember the day she quit her cafe job. She came home in tears, saying her manager was sexually harassing her. Another lie. It turns out she just stopped showing up and got fired. She was so upset, saying she could not focus on her studies with all this stress. I told her not to worry about it, that I would cover everything until she graduated. The smile she gave me, man, I should have seen it for what it was. She just landed her biggest score yet. After that, my expenses basically doubled overnight. Rent, utilities, her car payment, insurance, phone bill, credit card bills, which somehow kept getting higher. Plus all the little stuff she would ask for. New clothes for interviews, a laptop for school, textbooks, supplies. She even convinced me to pay her student loan payments because she was building her credit for our future. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass even harder at work, started taking on more consulting gigs, picking up extra surgeries whenever I could. There were weeks I would be at the hospital by 4:30 a.m., finish my last case at 6 p.m., then drive 2 hours to consult at some startup medical device company until 10 p.m. Some nights, I would get home so tired I could barely see straight. But Sarah, she was living her best life on my dime, always had the latest iPhone, designer bags, new clothes, started getting her nails done weekly, hair done monthly at this fancy salon downtown. When I mentioned the expenses piling up, she would get really quiet and sad, start talking about how maybe she was holding me back and how she understood if I wanted to find someone more successful. Classic manipulation, but it worked every time. I would end up apologizing and telling her not to worry about the money. Here is the really messed up part. She got really good at timing her expensive requests with my big commission checks, like she had a sixth sense for when I was about to get paid. The day before a major bonus hit, suddenly her laptop would break, or she would have some urgent bill that needed paying. She knew exactly how much I made and when I made it. The worst thing was watching my savings disappear. I used to be pretty good with money, had a solid emergency fund, was investing regularly, the whole responsible adult thing. But supporting 2 people in an expensive city while trying to maintain the lifestyle she had gotten used to? That adds up fast. I found out later she was actually taking pictures of my credit card statements when they came in, tracking exactly how much I had available. Looking back, I cannot believe how blind I was. The signs were everywhere, like how she would get super interested in my work around commission time, asking detailed questions about which surgeons I was working with and how many cases I had scheduled, or how she always seemed to have some crisis that needed money right when I was too busy with work to really look into it. Now I'm ready to tell you about the day everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually my busiest days, typically with back-to-back surgeries scheduled at 3 different hospitals. But that day, something weird happened. My last 2 cases got canceled because the surgeon caught the flu. It was only 2 p.m., and for the first time in months, I had a free afternoon. I decided to surprise Sarah. She had been complaining that we never spent time together anymore. Rich, considering what I found out later. There is this really high-end sushi place she loves, the kind where you drop $150 easily on a few fancy rolls. I called ahead, ordered all her favorites, that ridiculous gold flake roll she always posted on Instagram, the fatty tuna that cost more than my first car payment, the works. I even got that overpriced sake she liked. The whole drive home, I was actually feeling good about life, like maybe things were finally settling down at work, and we could get back to how we used to be. Funny how life gives you these perfect setup moments before it kicks you in the teeth. I got to our building around 3 p.m. The first weird thing I noticed was that her study group car was not in the parking lot. Sarah always said her friend Amy drove her to these study sessions, but instead, I saw her best friend Jessica's car. Not a red flag on its own, they hung out sometimes, but something felt off. Walking up to our apartment on the 17th floor, the elevator was down for maintenance, because of course it was. I started hearing voices through the door. The door was cracked open slightly. Sarah always did this when she had friends over because our hallway got so hot. I was about to walk in when I heard my name. Mike has no clue, Sarah was saying, and then she laughed. Not her normal laugh. This was different, mean, mocking. He is so desperate to keep me happy he will pay for anything. Did I tell you guys about the new iPhone? He did not even question it when I said I needed it for school projects. I froze. The takeout bag suddenly felt like it weighed a ton in my hand. Through the crack in the door, I could see them sitting in our living room. Sarah, Jessica, and another girl I did not recognize. They were drinking wine, the expensive stuff I had bought for our anniversary girl. "You have got it made," Jessica was saying. "But are you not worried he will find out about Chris?" My stomach dropped. Chris, her ex, the abusive one she told me horror stories about, the one she claimed she had to get a restraining order against. Another lie, I later discovered. Sarah actually snorted. "Please, Mike is so busy working, he does not even notice I am gone half the time. He actually believes I am at study group 3 nights a week. Meanwhile, Chris and I are using his credit card to fund our dates." The other girl, I found out later it was Chris's sister, chimed in. "But what if Mike checks the credit card statements?" "He never does," Sarah said, sounding proud of herself. "He is too tired from all those surgeries. Plus, I always time the bigger purchases around when he gets his commission checks. He thinks I am so interested in his work." "Oh, honey, how many cases do you have this month? That big surgeon must be keeping you busy." Meanwhile, I am just calculating how much I can spend. They all laughed at that, at me, in my own apartment that I paid for. "Chris says I should keep Mike around until I finish school," Sarah continued. "He is like my personal ATM, and he is talking about proposing soon. Can you imagine? I could probably milk him for a huge wedding, then take half his stuff in the divorce." "But do you not feel bad?" the sister asked. "He seems nice." "Nice but boring," Sarah cut in. "Do you know what he did last week? Apologized for being too tired for sex after a 12-hour surgery. Pathetic. At least Chris knows how to have fun. And it is not like Mike does not get anything out of it. He gets to tell everyone he has a hot girlfriend. That is worth the price of admission, right? More laughter, more wine, more jokes at my expense." They went on for a while, Sarah telling them about all the ways she manipulated me, all the lies she told, all the time she had been with Chris while I was working extra hours to pay for her lifestyle. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the food. Part of me wanted to burst in there, to scream, to throw them all out, but a colder, calmer part of my brain kicked in, the part that closes million-dollar deals and keeps surgeons happy. "Do not let them know you know," that part whispered. "Not yet. Get evidence, plan it out, make them pay." So, I did something that probably saved me a lot of headaches later. I pulled out my phone and recorded about 10 minutes of their conversation, got Sarah on video admitting to cheating, to lying, to using me for money. Then, as quietly as I could, I walked back down 17 floors, sitting in my car, surrounded by overpriced sushi I had bought for a woman who had been laughing at me for years. I started making plans. They wanted to play games with my money? Fine. Let us see how funny they think it is when the ATM shuts down. After sitting in my car for what felt like hours, I drove to a bar near the hospital where I knew none of Sarah's friends would show up. I started making a list on my phone of everything I needed to do. The medical device sales world teaches you to be methodical. When you are dealing with million-dollar contracts and surgeons' egos, you learn to plan everything down to the smallest detail. I decided to treat this like I would a major account. Gather intel, document everything, then execute perfectly. First stop was my bank. Thank God for Helen, this older lady who had been handling my account since I started my job. When I told her I needed to review every transaction from the past year because I suspected fraud, she did not even blink. We spent 3 hours going through statements, and holy cow, the pattern was so obvious once I was actually looking. Every time I had a big commission check coming in, there would be a spike in emergency expenses. New laptop, designer bags, spa days, all perfectly timed around my payday. Helen helped me document everything, then set up new accounts at a different bank. "Do not move your money yet," she advised. "Just be ready, smart lady." Next, I called my lawyer buddy, Dave. I met him at his office after hours and laid everything out. The recording from today, the bank statements, everything. He was actually impressed with how she had played me. She was building a paper trail, he explained, making it look like you had established a pattern of supporting her lifestyle. If you had married her, she could have made a case for maintaining that lifestyle during divorce. Dave helped me make a plan. First, we documented everything in my apartment that I had paid for, taking photos and collecting receipts, the designer bags, the jewelry, the electronics. It turned out I had spent over $40,000 just on gifts in the past year. He also advised me to start documenting every time she was supposedly at study group, tracking her location, saving any social media posts, everything. Remember that shared iPad she used for school? It turns out she never logged out of her messages or email. I am not proud of what I found, but she brought this on herself. There were hundreds of messages between her and Chris going back almost 2 years. Pictures of them together at hotels I paid for, restaurant receipts for my credit card. She had even been sending him money through Venmo, my money naturally. But the real gold mine was her conversations with her friends. Screenshots of my bank statements that she had sent them, laughing about how much she could spend, messages planning how to ask for more money, going to tell him I need a new laptop for finals. The old one works fine, but whatever, lol. Detailed discussions about how to slowly push for marriage. Once I get the ring, it is game over. I will own half his stuff. The more I dug, the worse it got. I found messages to Chris about trying to get pregnant. Imagine how much child support I could get from him. He would have to pay for everything. Thank God I always insisted on protection. There were even messages making fun of my work schedule. This idiot is doing back-to-back surgeries while I'm at the beach with my real man. I did not sleep that whole week. Every night after she went to bed, I would go through more messages, take more screenshots, gather more evidence. During the day, I acted completely normal, went to work, did my cases, came home tired. She did not suspect a thing, even asked me to buy her a new MacBook because hers was acting weird. I did it, wanted to keep her thinking everything was fine. The hardest part was playing nice with Chris's sister, who started showing up at our apartment more often. She would sit there drinking my wine, eating food I paid for, knowing the whole time what was going on. Once, I heard her warning Sarah to be more careful. Mike is not stupid, he might catch on. Sarah just laughed and said, "Please, he is too busy making money to notice anything." I also started digging into Chris's background. Remember how Sarah told me he was some successful business owner? Yeah, that was a lie. He worked as a bartender at some dive bar and had a record, mostly petty theft and a DUI, but he did have one interesting connection. His probation officer was a guy I knew from the hospital. We were not close, but we would chat when I saw him around. I filed that information away for later. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. Video recording of Sarah admitting to cheating and financial manipulation. Screenshots of hundreds of messages between her and Chris. Photos of them together at hotels and restaurants. Bank statements showing patterns of suspicious spending. Documentation of all the lies about her study groups. Evidence of her planning to trap me with marriage and pregnancy. Screenshots of her sharing my financial information with friends. And background information on Chris that would come in handy later. I saved everything in multiple places. Cloud storage, USB drives, even printed out hard copies that I kept in my office. Dave reviewed it all and confirmed I had more than enough to protect myself legally. But be smart, he warned. Do not confront her yet. Let her keep thinking she is winning. So, I waited. Kept playing the role of the oblivious boyfriend. Even took her out to a fancy dinner that weekend, where she spent the whole time texting Chris under the table. I watched her buy another $500 purse with my card, while she had plans to meet him later that night. All the while, I was getting my pieces in place, preparing for the moment I would shut down the ATM for good. The weekend after I gathered all the evidence, Sarah told me she had another study group session planned, said she would be gone all day Saturday working on some big project. I knew she was actually planning to meet Chris. I'd seen their messages planning a day trip to a nearby beach town, using my credit card to book a hotel room, of course. That Saturday morning, I woke up early and made her breakfast in bed, played the perfect boyfriend one last time. She was so convinced of her control over me that she actually took a selfie with the breakfast I made, captioned it being spoiled, and posted it to Instagram while texting Chris about their plans for later. As soon as she left, I put my plan into action. The first step was the financial nuclear option. Remember Helen from the bank? She had helped me prepare everything. Within an hour, I had transferred all my money to the new accounts at a different bank, removed Sarah as an authorized user on all credit cards, canceled every card she had access to, changed all my banking passwords, and put a fraud alert on my credit report. I documented every penny she had spent in the last month. Next came the apartment. I had already talked to my landlord earlier in the week, explaining the situation. The guy was actually really understanding. It turned out his ex-wife had done something similar to him. He agreed to let me break the lease with minimal penalty, and had already drawn up papers removing Sarah from the building security access. I hired movers, paid them extra to come on short notice. In 4 hours, they packed up everything I owned and everything I had bought for Sarah. All those designer bags, the jewelry, the electronics, everything went into storage. I left her personal stuff, the things she had actually bought herself, neatly packed in boxes in the living room. The movers were just finishing up when I got a text from Sarah, having lunch with the study group, miss you. She attached a photo of a salad that I knew was actually from last week because I had seen her post the same photo in her group chat with Jessica. I did not respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility and documented everything I had moved, taking photos and videos for legal purposes. Dave had advised me to keep all her stuff safe and accessible. This way, she could not claim I had stolen or damaged anything. The facility security cameras would prove nothing had been touched. Around 4 p.m., my phone started blowing up. Sarah's first message was casual. "Hey babe, might be late tonight. Project's taking longer than expected." Translation: she and Chris were probably getting day drunk at the beach on my dime. I did not reply. Instead, I went to meet Dave at his office. We had prepared a stack of papers, documentation of all her spending, proof of the affair, evidence of her sharing my financial information, everything. We made copies and sent them to my work email, my personal email, and gave sets to both Dave and Helen for safekeeping. By 6 p.m., Sarah was getting nervous. More texts started coming in. "Babe, why are you not answering? Did you try to use the credit card? There must be some mistake. Mike, what is going on? Why cannot I get into my bank account? The cards are not working. Call me a sap." I watched the messages pile up while having dinner with Dave. He walked me through what to expect. She would probably cycle through panic, anger, attempts to manipulate, and finally desperation. The key, he said, is to not engage at all. You have all the power as long as you stay silent. Around 8 p.m., Sarah finally went home. I know the exact moment she walked into the apartment because my phone essentially exploded. At 8:14, "What the hell, Mike? 8:14, where is all your stuff?" 8:15, why are my things in boxes? 8:15, call me right now. 8:16, what the hell? 15 missed calls, then came the voice messages. I listened to them later. Quite a performance. She went from screaming to crying to begging in the span of minutes. By 9 p.m., she was calling from different numbers, probably borrowing phones from neighbors. I blocked each one. She tried email, blocked. Instagram, blocked. Even LinkedIn, blocked. She sent Jessica to my office. Security had already been notified not to let her in. The final message I got before blocking her completely was particularly desperate. "Please, Mike, I can explain everything. I need my stuff. I have finals next week. I cannot lose the apartment. Please just talk to me. I love you. Whatever you think happened, it is not what you think." The morning after I moved everything out, Sarah went into full panic mode. I woke up to 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages from various numbers. She had apparently spent the night calling everyone we knew, trying to figure out what happened. The story she was telling people was fascinating. According to her, I had lost my mind and stolen everything while she was studying with friends. See, Sarah and Chris had this regular routine. They would meet at this upscale hotel where they thought nobody would recognize them. The manager gave me access to their security footage, showing them using my credit card to check in multiple times over the past few months. Even better, she had receipts showing them charging room service and spa treatments to the room. While Sarah was having her meltdown at the apartment, I was setting up the final pieces. I had Dave draft a formal letter detailing everything we had discovered, including exact amounts she had spent on unauthorized purchases, dates and times of her meetings with Chris, copies of messages planning to trap me with marriage and pregnancy, documentation of her sharing my financial information, and evidence of her using my cards to fund their affair. The letter made it clear she had 48 hours to arrange to pick up her belongings from storage, or they would be considered abandoned. Also, any attempts to contact me would be considered harassment. Dave had it delivered to her at the apartment by a courier who recorded the delivery. Sarah's reaction was explosive, to say the least. She showed up at my office, mascara running, screaming about how I was ruining her life. Security had to escort her out. She tried waiting in the parking lot. I just stayed inside until she left. She even went to my mom's house. Bad move. My mom had never liked her and took way too much pleasure in shutting the door in her face. But here is where it gets really good. Remember that probation officer I mentioned? It turns out Chris was not just on probation, he was on his last warning. The photos I had of him drinking and driving were a direct violation. His probation officer was especially interested in the credit card fraud angle. Within 48 hours, Chris was arrested for probation violation. Sarah found out about Chris's arrest while she was in the middle of trying to salvage her semester. She had missed 2 finals because she was too busy having a meltdown about losing access to my money. Her professors were not exactly sympathetic when she tried to explain that she could not take the tests because her boyfriend had caught her cheating and cut her off financially. The domino effect was beautiful to watch. No access to credit cards meant no way to pay for anything. No apartment, she was not on the lease, meant she had to move. Missed finals meant failing grades. Failed classes meant academic probation. No money for next semester's tuition. Chris in jail meant no backup plan. She tried everything to get back in contact with me. Some highlights: she had her mom call my mom, got shut down hard, sent a handwritten letter to my office, returned unopened, created. New social media accounts to message me, blocked, got mutual friends to try to mediate. I showed them the evidence, and they backed off. She even tried to file a police report, claiming I had stolen her things. That backfired when I showed them the documentation. The best part? Those friends who used to drink my wine and laugh at me behind my back, they disappeared real quick when they realized Sarah could not fund those fancy brunches anymore. Jessica, who had been her main enabler, blocked her number after Sarah tried to crash on her couch and borrow money for the 5th time. Meanwhile, Chris was having his own problems. During his probation violation hearing, evidence of the credit card fraud came up. His probation got revoked, and he was looking at serious jail time. His sister, remember her from the wine drinking session, tried to contact me to explain things. I sent her the video of her laughing along while Sarah talked about manipulating me. She did not message again. But my favorite moment came about 2 weeks after everything went down. Sarah's dad called me. I actually answered because I was curious what she had told her family. It turns out she had been lying to them too, told them she had a job, was paying her own way through school, all that. Her dad had just found out about all the debt she had racked up in his name. He was not calling to defend her. He was calling to apologize to me and ask how much she had stolen. The entire house of cards she had built came crashing down in less than a month. She had to drop out of school, move back in with her parents in their small town, and get a job at the local Walmart. Last I heard, she was trying to convince her parents to pay off her credit card debt and let her enroll in community college. They refused. Chris got sentenced to 6 months for the probation violation. His bartending job fired him, and with a fraud charge pending, good luck getting another service industry job. Apparently, he has been telling people I set him up. Yeah, I totally set you up to drink and drive while on probation, bro. The best revenge? I did not have to actually do much. Just cut off the money and let their own actions catch up with them. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and watching karma do its thing.